You ready? All right, y'all. Welcome back to Talking with Big Fella, the Mayoral edition. As I mentioned, a lot of those shows we were shooting over at Kneecap, but today we are at the Felavision / Make It in Nashville studios. And, you know, it's always about the mayor, but the vice mayor seat is up for election also. And, you know, people usually leave out the vice mayor, but it's a really important position that helps this city run the way it needs to run. And today we have one of the candidates with us, Miss Angie Henderson. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's all to the good, all to the good.
Thank you.
Okay. First question.
Yes.
Where you from?
I'm from Nashville.
Really?
I'm a Nashville native, yes.
All the way, you an original?
I'm an OG.
Yeah. Did you go to, so you went to elementary school, middle school, high school, all that in Nashville?
I did.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
Yep.
Do you have any brothers and sisters?
I do not. I'm an only child.
Oh, man, you know them only children.
I know. See, we have a bad reputation.
Yeah.
But I would say we're pretty intentional, diligent people. So I spend a lot of time just kind of reading by myself, but I also get along with folks pretty well. So we're not all bad. We're not all bad, we only children. I'm even married to an only child.
Really?
What? Yeah.
Do you have any children?
We have 2 children.
Okay, I was going to say, you got an only child?
That would be wrong, right?
Okay. So, your background, how did you get to this situation? First off, why are you running for vice mayor? What made you say, I'm going to run for vice mayor?
Yes. So I've been serving on the council for 8 years.
Okay.
I have a really strong policy record. I ran for office to deliver a sidewalk policy because I was pretty frustrated. I'd lived in some other cities. I moved back home, and I just found it really hard to walk anywhere. And I feel like so many of the things we need to do as a city, you can't take the bus if you can't walk to the bus. And I was volunteering with Walk Bike Nashville in my neighborhood and just trying to get, little pieces here and there. And, oh, yay, we got this teeny little bit of sidewalk. And then I realized, you know what? We are 526 square miles, and if we're going to get some stuff done, we need to effectuate some policy. And so your city council is your policy body, your legislative branch. And so I ran for office to deliver policy, to work on all that land use stuff, bikeways and trees and affordable housing and transit, and I'm kind of like a cities nerd. So
Really?
So I've enjoyed that policy work, but we have a very difficult policy environment in Nashville because we are 526 square miles, urban, rural, suburban, old city of Nashville, county. It's kind of a complex puzzle. And so once you've done a lot of this work, you learn a lot. And so I just feel like I've built a strong skill set. I have the respect of my colleagues. It's difficult to be a district council member. You spend a lot of time, like really just underwater, just trying to keep up with stuff. So I'm really running to serve the council, support the council, and lead that policy work.
As a vice mayor, what does a vice mayor actually do? Most people would be like,
right?
Yeah, is it the Mike Pence of
God,
Kamala
no.
Harris of Nashville?
There we go. Except different from Kamala and our President Biden. We don't run on the same ticket. And so that is intentional in Nashville.
Okay.
So we have a strong mayor system, but the vice mayor runs on a separate ticket all by herself. Because of checks and balances, right? So our charter has put a lot of power into that mayor's office. And that's why those are separate, ideally, so that vice mayor can lead that legislative branch, and we've got a check and a balance on our strong mayor system.
So the vice mayor leads the council.
Correct. The vice mayor is the president of the city council. Assigning committees, appointing chairs to those committees. And I would assert, I think historically maybe less so. I think sometimes people think that the vice mayor just kind of, sits in the chair, bangs the gavel, has to know Robert's rules, runs the meeting.
Yeah.
That is important, and I can do that. But also, we have a really complex puzzle of policy work that we need to do. That work should be aligned with our committees. Our policy work should be aligned with our strategic plans.
Yeah.
Should be aligned with our budget. And so Nashville's been pretty sideways, pretty off track in my view, because we've had 3 mayors in a time that we would typically have 1, right? Because we had the Megan Barry debacle, and then it was Briley, and then it was Cooper. And, I do a lot of multimodal policy work. We've had effectively 5 different public works directors in my 8 years.
All right, so you said multimodal. What is multimodal? What that mean?
So that means sidewalks, bikeways, transit, so not just going everywhere in your car.
Different modes of transportation.
We are a very car-dependent city, right? Our development pattern's pretty sprawled and pretty car-oriented.
Yeah.
So that, when you're trying to do that work and you've had effectively 5 different people leading that office with 3 different mayors, right? So, you got to walk and back strategic plan. You got all these things you need to do. But then, another mayor comes in and updates that plan. And then there's the transportation plan and then the next transportation plan. So we've been out of sync. And I think the vice mayor is an important role because the kind of history, where we've been, what we've tried before, what worked, what didn't work. And so if you can get those plans lined up with your policy, lined up with your budget, then you're on track. Then you're kind of optimizing everything.
Okay, so it's a big event time.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
Yep.
It's the way
Yep.
it's been set up for a long time, and it's working, and it's good because it kind of turns into, it helped transform into that it city. People know you come to Nashville, you're gonna have a good time.
Right. Got music, events, all kinds of good stuff. Fun city. Yeah.
So at the same time, being a big event town, is there place for regular people in this big event town, and like how that dynamic, how can, as a vice mayor, you make that better for the regular people here, or is it possible?
I think it absolutely is possible. I think where we are sideways and where people are disappointed in us as a city, and Nashvillians are disappointed, is that, we will move heaven and earth for the Music City Grand Prix and the concert for Taylor, and shut down this road and reroute everything over there or here or there. And, what I hear people saying is, my kids can't walk to school, and, I'd just like to be able to bike over to work. And so we put a lot of time and attention into these big events, right? Because we're in a reactive posture. We're always reacting. Next big event, next big event. And we can't kind of get our head up above water to be proactive about building a network. That is the thing. Everybody is so over and frustrated about, we did this piece, and then we did that piece, and then we did that. People want to see an effective network, and a network is something that we can feel and experience, right? Because then our kids can walk to and from school, or we can get to the bus and we can get to work. And that is so inextricably related to affordability and quality of life, and we just got to deliver on that,
Is it possible with the affordability and quality of life? Is it possible, Because I was at the council meeting, actually, when he was getting put on the kneecap board, we were at that meeting, and that was at the same time, I forgot that dude's name, but they were talking about the Republican National Convention thing.
Yep.
And it kind of got pushed off to, nobody really wanted to deal with it. It was like, I don't know, maybe we talk about it next time. And when I left that meeting, I was just like, the absolute worst person to discriminate against is like a old Republican Tennessee backcountry politically minded white dude. You know what I'm saying? That's the great discriminator, Look at Martin Luther King. You can't discriminate against them. They do the discriminating. You know what I'm saying? And you see, we feeling the wrath for that,
Well, I would assert that was just one piece in a larger puzzle, right? And so I think folks would like you to think that, well, because the council voted no on that, for which there were a whole lot of like logistical and fiscal implications.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I was getting contacts from folks, phone calls from constituents who were like, can we please not have that big convention? Because kind of the lockdown in the sadly hyper-polarized political climate that we have now, like the sort of the lockdown for downtown and closing all the streets, we were talking about it earlier, right? For these major events. I was getting calls from people, that work downtown, have businesses downtown, were like, we don't want it. We don't want it. And so the fiscal implications, the logistical implications to your earlier point of like having to move heaven and earth, shut everything down for that. And so I think it was sort of used as leverage, in my view, to kind of set up a narrative, right? Like, oh, well, look at this council, look at this big bad blue council, discriminating. And that's not what it was at all. And it was just one piece in a long line of things that were seeds that had been planted, little fires that had been lit. And I think, it was sort of like, well, you should use as leverage, that you're going to downsize the council and they won't want that. And if you use that, then they'll vote for it. Just all these background machinations. There's a fair, small cohort of folks in the business community that I would assert don't have Nashville's best interest at heart. And they're up there at the state legislature speaking in a few key people's ears to the detriment of this city. So.
Well, I know we feeling the wrath.
Yep.
They want it all now. I guess I could feel that, though. They use that as kind of like a,
right.
Like, okay, let's use this one. Now we can go get it all.
So like the oversimplification or distillation of that is to the advantage of a false narrative is, well, the council didn't vote for the Republican convention and look what it's all wrought. That's been coming together for a long time.
That's the American way, spin a good story, tell a good tale.
Well, and one of the things I will say that motivates me in running for vice mayor is because we have this strong mayor system, whether it be the Titan Stadium or, what happened with the Republican convention, they are always controlling the narrative. And, we do the policy work, we make the decisions, that comes through our committees. We should have a press release about that, right? What are we, as the legislative body, the representative body of 40 members that represents this whole entire county, what do we want to say about this? And, if a council member happens to have the time here or there, they might say something, but we're not particularly organized in how we communicate, whereas the mayor's office, they got a huge staff, and, they're running the narrative on the Titan Stadium. They were running the narrative along with the lobbyists, and the Tennessean picked up the narrative, and it's hard to break that narrative when you don't have kind of the power that you need or the kind of the history of people listening to the council.
Okay, so when I was in Detroit, I went back to Detroit like 2013, 14-ish to kind of be part of the revitalization situation. And that was another issue where it was really when I got up there and seen all the amazing stuff that was happening in Detroit, I was like, they just got bad PR. They just like, everybody else is telling Detroit's story and Detroit's believing it and running with it instead of just tell the story, all the cool stuff happening here.
Absolutely.
And you can fight that. But one thing they had was a 50-year plan, a 50-year framework, Detroit Future Cities. And it's like, it's a beautiful document. Like, the book is so cool. And I never looked at like a civic document like that in my life, but I read it. And in it, it had like, I guess because Detroit has been historically a black city, that there were neighborhoods and pockets where you had to have thriving African-American communities, thriving African-American business districts. It was wrote into the plan. So all the stakeholders, the business community, the organizations, everybody was in on it. And it was like, okay, moving forward, this has to happen. Then I come back to Nashville and I'm like, does Nashville, from a city perspective, does Nashville have to have black people? And if so, it would have to be written down somewhere, because if not, AJ Capital will buy North Nashville and you'll never get it back unless you got some hedge fund. What's your thoughts on that? And what's your thoughts on that?
So I think, the kind of the existential "who are we" question, right? Like,
Yeah.
who are we for? Where do we come from? Who all is here? Who's coming? Who do we want to stay? Like, I think we have to be very intentional about, what are our communities, our historical communities in certain areas? What are the histories around that? What are the legacy businesses that are there? And so we have a countywide general plan. It's called Nashville Next. It is very land use focused, right? We're going to have this kind of development here, aligned with transportation. But I would say maybe missing from that is sort of the larger cultural narrative and the business and the community support and just the history.
Yeah.
There is so much history in any city, but it matters who tells the history,
Right.
and it matters what history that we feature. And I know in my service on the council, we have made sure that we have more historical markers
Right.
that represent African American history, women in history, our LGBTQ community. Because, when I drove around my district, there were a whole lot of historical markers, but they're all about the Civil War.
Yeah.
This battle was fought here and that battle was fought there. And, you're seeing that like around Fort Negley,
Yeah.
kind of, telling all sides of the narrative and the history. And so I do think you absolutely have to be intentional about that, because to your point about Detroit earlier, that gets trotted out all the time. It's just this false narrative, right? Like big, bad, blue city, predominantly black city, right? Like, burning down, going to hell, all that kind of stuff. And it's a false narrative in my view. There are some very practical things that happened there. They had a single industry-based economy, right? They also, lost a lot of their tax base out to the suburbs. So it was disinvested. And so, Nashville has an interesting history because we consolidated our city and our county. So we didn't lose that tax base, but we are absolutely challenged at this juncture as to affordability and infill and, to your point, historic communities where it's just,
Is it possible? Is it really possible, like, to really mark that? Because it seems like it's a new concept when I mention it, and it's intriguing, but do you really think that it's possible? That would be a city council and mayor type of thing, huh?
I think so, because there's some talk now about, how do we go back to this countywide general plan, this Nashville Next plan? And, it very was specifically in kind of that land use space.
Right.
But, we have a Metro Arts Commission. We have our Human Relations Commission. And I think if we bring some of this to bear and say, this isn't going to solely be a land use plan, but let's talk about, what is our kind of what are our cultural goals?
Yeah.
Our history? How are we going to align? History and urban form are inextricably linked to each other, right? Whether that be, disinvestment, redlining, where we put our interstates, all that. And it's really important for young people in Nashville, folks of all ages, folks moving here to understand, why does the city look like this? Why, why do these folks live here but not over there?
Yeah, why does Jefferson look the way it looked?
Right,
I was asking, every time I asked that question, I ain't gonna say no names, but I asked like influential people, and I'm like, how? You got TSU, Fisk, Meharry, Citizens Bank, the oldest black bank, I think in America especially, is still going.
Yep.
All that right there, and then you got Jefferson right here. I'm like, is it just like some evil white man in the sky, like, you better not build nothing here? Like, what is it? Why? How can Germantown, I remember I almost bought a house in Salem Town when we were moving here, and it was dilapidated, and now it looks like that. But you go right down the street, same zip code, everything. It's like nothing.
Well, what happens when you start to kind of hollow out a street, right? And so building, parking lot, building, parking lot. You lose some of that kind of cohesion and street activity. So it seems to me, just as far as its urban form, Jefferson kind of got caught in this place where, it was disinvested. Then, stuff got knocked down. Sometimes with the best of intentions, some of our faith communities bought adjacent buildings, knocked those down so they could have bigger parking lots, And so when you drive down Jefferson, it's a lot of parking lots. And so, infill development can absolutely come back there. There's an amazing history there. I have wondered somewhat why it has languished. And I attended Dr. LaRotha Williams and Dr. Pethel and my colleague on council, Mr. Kendall. There was a history forum at the library about the history of Jefferson Street. I had to join it kind of towards the end because I had to attend a funeral, sadly. But I'm very interested in that, and I think there is tons of opportunity there. I mean, when I look at Nashville and our kind of core urban neighborhoods, the opportunity for affordable housing infill, kind of new ways to do our urban forms so that, you're not having to drive all the way out, to qualify, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think there's so much opportunity.
Yeah. I was telling somebody, I was like, I got friends that moved from California, and if you sold your 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom bungalow for $1.4 million.
You're like $3 million in California, right? Your 700 square foot house, right?
Yeah, and then you come here and it's like, a lot of these people too, with the Oracles, the Amazons, whatever, they don't know nothing about the history. They don't care. They're just trying to find a house close to where they're going to work, good price that will go up in value. Right. It's not like some evil plan. It's just numbers. It's just a lot of people, Yeah.
Well, and I appreciate at the state, in partnership with Nashville, we have raised the property tax freeze qualifying income level. It used to be down in the lower 40s. Now it's up at 60. So some of our seniors, as far as their combined income, they can qualify for a property tax freeze. I think that's an important tool so folks can age in place. I do think we have, to your point about the math, we do have some tools that we can work on there. There's a whole lot of good folks in the affordable housing community, and we just need to kind of start delivering on that more.
Okay, so I would love to talk to you about Nashville's, since the 1800s, people have been publishing, intellectual property, is creativity. It's one of them places where people go to follow their dreams at. And any of those places got a special energy to them, which is part of the reason why when these companies come here and people come here, you could feel that. The state tax is a plus. The no state tax is a super plus on attracting people. Yeah. But it's that vibe that Nashville has, the creative. Yeah, but a lot of those people, I don't think they are, just more and more, slowly, but more and more are unable to be here or afford to be here. And we don't want to lose what made us,
Agreed.
So, I don't know, as vice mayor, I don't know what the vice mayor could actually do, or the city council, or the mayor for whatever, but how, first, is it part of the plan to try to keep some of those people here, that creativity here?
Absolutely.
And second, what's some ways that we can do that, or at least, keep building that out?
I think, the creative economy is essential, right? That's kind of like the soul of Nashville, right? And so we're fortunate that we are not solely dependent on that, right? So we have the healthcare, we have the publishing, to your point. So we have, one of our strengths is our diversified economy, but essentially kind of the soul and the heart of it is the creativity, right? And so I think for those creators, we do have to, I loved seeing this space today, right? The maker spaces and supporting that from a zoning perspective. Often those are in industrial areas, but then how do you get here without a car? And that has affordability factors. So I think we have to have some conversations about as a city about infill development and what does that look like, because at present how it feels is the only kind of infill development is sort of like the ugly tall skinny next to the small older bungalow, but there are a whole lot of if you were to look historically in Detroit or Chicago or some of our other cities where we brought all this stuff into neighborhoods where we had looks like a house, but it's actually 4 apartments, you know, and you're close to transit, and you can walk down, and you've got, you know, some, small restaurant spaces and artist spaces. We have sort of painted ourselves into corners because we're so car oriented. Yeah. That has an extremely negative impact on our affordability. And so we got to mix it up. You know, people talk a lot about mixed use zoning, but that's where the affordability comes, right? Like, so we don't need to be compartmentalized and like, oh, this is industrial artist stuff over here. Yeah. And then the people live over here. And oops, the only way you can get between these two is with a car. So sorry. Like, we need, and in old cities, what you had is, you know, you had your maker space and your store down below, and you lived up top. Right? We got to bring that stuff back together, and it can't just be, you know, the kind of high-end special thing over in Germantown, right? We got to do it everywhere, in my view.
I like when you just did that right there, too. That was, okay, then you just, I felt that. Okay, we got a couple minutes left.
Yeah.
Real quick, everybody want to know this transit thing. Like, is it too late?
No.
What can we do to catch this? Because more people are coming faster than we're making decisions as a city, you know?
I feel that, yeah.
We only got a couple minutes left, but real quick, what's something that could be done that's like practical?
Yeah. We need dedicated funding for transit. We do. Part of my opposition to the Titan Stadium is, you know, there's an opportunity cost to everything. You keep adding an increment of taxes onto, you know, your hotel and this and that, and you're losing the opportunity to invest in things that are network building, right? Yeah. So we got to get back to that dedicated funding conversation, and I would say Nashvillians are going to support that if we have a really excellent bus service, you know, later hours, crosstown routes, you know, so we don't have only hub and spoke, and you know, sidewalks, just a lot of sidewalks we need to build because we're kind of retrofitting suburbia, working like 80 years backwards. Yeah. We merged our city and county. Post WW2, we were like, cars are awesome. We sprawled out. So we absolutely can get back to that transportation plan. We've got to do it. It is our next big thing as a city that we've got to deliver on because it's the glue that ties everything together, really.
You feel like everybody's kind of on the same page with that?
I think so. I think people were more skeptical with the first, you know, super duper big plan, which, you know, was 5 short corridors of light rail. Didn't really serve kind of everybody. I know everybody says like, well, people like light rail more than the bus. Like, you know, so what? You know, like do a better marketing plan for the bus. I ride the bus. It's fine. You know, people go to other cities, they ride the bus. So I do think we just need a really excellent bus system. And WeGo, formerly MTA, to their credit, they are head down to the grindstone. They are just working their plan. We're getting it into their budget. They're extending their routes. They're running their hours. So we just work the plan that we got and do another plan real soon. So.
Well.
Oh, we're out at 0.
That's all the time we got. That's all the time we got. You've been talking to big fella, Angie Henderson, August 3rd. Early voting's happening.
July 14th, Friday.
Yeah, coming soon. The choice is yours. Make it. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
Boom.
Thank you.
Yeah.